you can give some input, get some output, that is true, but you can decide how the data will be processed, right? So that is the capability of this digital circuit, and we are going to see which hardware component is responsible for that in today's lecture, right? So now, uh, first of all, what is architecture of microprocessor? Architecture of microprocessor means inside any digital circuit, there will be data movement and communication. There are only these two tasks which happen. There is data movement and communication within the system. And how this happens, uh, to know that thing is called as knowing the architecture of that particular digital circuit. So ultimately, a digital circuit will deal with data. So data movement will be there inside that digital circuit. Plus, there will be communication within the digital circuit. And if this data movement and communication could be controlled by us, we can say that we can program that machine, right? However, for some digital circuit, the data movement and communication cannot be controlled by us, which are not programmable, that you might have studied in your digital logic and design course. So those are not considered as programmable. So how this 8085 becomes programmable, and how the programs are executed, and how things go systematically inside microprocessor, that's all we are going to see in today's lecture, right? So let me just show you the diagram that we are going to discuss here. This is our microprocessor's diagram. This is the entire diagram of our microprocessor, right? So let me just zoom it a little bit more. Where have I lost it? Yeah, so this is the complete diagram, block diagram of the digital circuit that we have. So first of all, could you identify some components which are, already known to you from the programming model? Because this complete diagram will also have the registers that you have seen in the programming model, right? So let us first begin by identifying some components which we already know, and you will see most of the components are those components only. So here you see there is this accumulator register. We are already aware of this accumulator register. This is a 8-bit register, and it's a default register for many calculation, and it acts as operand for a lot of commands like add commands, subtract command, etc. So one of the default operands happens to be this accumulator registers, right? Then we have got this flag register. You can see that flag, it is shown as a 5-bit register here, because 3 bits are don't care bits, and it is made up of flip flops. So that's the construction part. We do not need to know the construction part as of now. So flag register is essentially made up of 5 usable bits, right? So one is accumulator, another is temporary register. Let us see at this register stack. So how many registers do we know in this particular thing? So we know this BC pair, we know DE pair, we know this HL pair, stack pointer, and program counter. Isn't it? All of these registers are known to us and with their purpose. For example, program counter is used to hold the address of the next executable instruction, and or more generally said, program counter holds the address of the external memory where the next executable instruction is kept. This is the definition of program counter. Stack pointer holds the address of top of stack. Top of stack means the last filled location, right? That's what we mean by top of stack in 8085. Then HL register pair, it could be either used as H and L registers separately of 1 byte each, or the 2-byte register could be used for pointer operations in conjunction with the M register, right? Then you have this DE register pair and BC register pair, which are also used combinedly for obtaining the data from external memory to within the microprocessor, or vice versa, but by using some special commands like LDAX, right, or STAX. So this is all known to us. You could see these two extra registers here, W and Z registers. They were not a part of the programming model. So these registers are not available to a programmer directly. Although they are a part of architecture, they will be used in operations like swapping, etc. For example, you write the command move D, E. you write the command move D comma E. So where will the data move from and to which register will it go?
From E to D.
From E to D. So whenever you swap things, some intermediate register is required. Is it or is it not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that intermediate register could be W or Z register, right? So it is not available to the programmer directly, but definitely for executing various commands that you have, this is used. So this is not a part of programming model, but it is a part of register stack, and both of them are of 8 bits, right? W and Z register. Similarly, you haven't seen this incrementer decrementer address latch. So this incrementer decrementer address latch is also not a part of programming model, and as soon you will be able to see that it is used to increment or decrement the address latch. So when we will discuss the address latch, I will let you know what is the purpose of this. So this is also not a part of programming model, but it plays a great role in accessing the data from the externally interfaced memory. So there are some familiar elements which we have seen in this register stack, because in programming model mostly registers were there. So most of the registers were present in this register stack, and one is the accumulator, another is a flag flip-flop. So there is one more temporary register which is present here, right, together with this accumulator. So what is the purpose of this temporary register? So whenever you write the command, suppose you have written the command MVI, sorry, not MVI, let us say you have written the command ADDB, right? So the contents of B will be added with the default register accumulator, and the result will be stored in accumulator itself. So how does that happen? So that thing happens through this temporary register. So the data of B will be copied to the temporary register, and after copying it to the temporary register, the data of both will be added and it will be stored in accumulator. Now, for any other register, you have got this temporary register. First of all, the data will be copied there and the operation will be executed with accumulator. So why do we need this intermediate register in this case? Could somebody explain to me? If I simply write ADDB statement, then simply add A and B and put the data in the accumulator. What is the need of this temporary register then? What is the purpose?
So we first stored the addition in temp and then in accumulator.
But why? We already have the data in B register, and when I specify that ADDB has to be done, so simply the data of B and A should be added and it should be kept in accumulator. So what is the need of this temporary register?
So the accumulator is already filled.
It's already filled, but no problem. Na? Some data is in A, some data is in B. You have to add both of them. So by internal logic, the data will be added and it will be stored in accumulator. Anyone else who want to give a try?
Sir, data contained in accumulator may have to perform another operation. So
No, at one
temporarily
time the microprocessor will be performing one operation only. This is not a microprocessor which will perform multitasking. So if one command is there, it will execute that command fully and then go to the next command. Anyone else who would like to give a try? Okay, so I'll explain the reason. The reason is very simple. I mean, it does not it is not because of the programming or because of how the data is moving. It is primarily because of the fact that if you have a command like ADDB, you could sometimes write ADDD also. You could sometimes write ADDH also, right? Which means that whatever register is written, it has to be added with the accumulator. And if you omit this temporary register and you try to add this accumulator and B directly, there have to be connections directly between the accumulator and B register, right, to be able to take their data and add their data. So A register should have to be connected with all of the registers that you see here independently, and then the data should be added. So, you know, this is a 8-bit register, and every register that you see here is again a 8-bit register. So you need to have 8 connections for B, 8 connections for D, 8 connections for H, and so on and so forth. But that can be avoided if we use a temporary register here and copy the data of that temporary register, and whenever the addition is required, both of these can be added. So that is why this temporary register comes into play. How they are connected, I am going to show you in a moment. So the reason for introducing this temporary register for acting with accumulator is primarily because of the hardware construction, right? If this register would not have been there, you would have to use a lot many wires to connect everything inside this, and it is actually very hard. You might have seen how small a microprocessor is on your motherboard. So fabricating connections onto that small chip is very hard, right? It's a very tedious process, and not every connection can be made in that way. So that is the reason for the existence of this temporary register. So after seeing this register stack, let us see how things are connected inside this microprocessor. So for the data movement, you have something which is called as data bus. You can see that this is a 8-bit internal data bus. Which element? This longer element that you see here. In this complete diagram, this longer element that you see here is a data bus. What is a data bus? As the name suggests, bus moves data from one place to another, right? So this data bus will also serve the same purpose, but it is a set of wires. It is a set of 8 wires, which we collectively call as bus, right? And this set of wires is connected to every element inside the microprocessor which requires data or which gives data. So you can see that this data bus is connected to the accumulator in a bidirectional way. Accumulator can transfer the data or take data from the data bus. Temporary register can only take data from the from this data bus. It cannot give data to the accumulator. It cannot give data to the data bus, right? Similarly, flag flip-flops are connected in bidirectional way to this data bus, and you will see that this register is connected through multiplexer to the data bus. What is a multiplexer device? You all must have studied this multiplexer in digital logic and design course. So could somebody recall the definition of multiplexer?
Sir, in multiplexer we have n inputs, then their number of outputs will be 2 to the power n.
Number of outputs would be 2 raised to the power of n, or one output will be there.
There are 2 to the power n minus 1 inputs and n selection lines.
N selection lines, yes. And how many outputs?
1.
One, sir, 1.
Okay, that is the technical definition. I mean the construction-wise definition. But what is the purpose of using a multiplexer in a digital circuit? What does it achieve?
Sir, to switch on one circuit at a time if there are multiple options.
Yeah, close to what it is actually conceptualized as. The thing is, suppose you have got a shared resource. You have got a shared resource, right? For example, you may think that you want to communicate over a channel, right? You want to make a communication from one place to another place, right? But for making that communication in your house, only one mobile phone is available, right? So sometime you will be using that mobile phone. Sometime your family members must be using that mobile phone. So at one time, only one person can use that mobile phone. So if there is a shared resource, there is a need for a digital circuit to enable the users who are using that shared resource to sensibly use it, or to use it in a fashion in which everyone's data will be transferred. Everyone will be given some time slot, and accordingly their data can be transferred. So you can see that the shared resource here is the data bus. The data bus that you see here is a shared resource. And any of these registers that you see in this register stack could need to transfer the data to this temporary register for calculation. As I told you, in the command of add B, this B register needs to be added with this accumulator register, and whatever is the data, it has to be stored onto the accumulator register itself. So out of this register stack, which register should be given the access to this data bus is decided by this multiplexer. How many inputs are there? You can see that there are multiple registers which acts as input to that. And there will be, of course, some select lines for this multiplexer depending upon certain logic. They will be giving the access of this data bus to that particular register, B in our case, and the data from that will be transferred to the temporary register. You can see that the temporary register can only take data from the data bus. It cannot give data to the data bus, right? So data from B register will be transferred to the temporary register, and the accumulator and temporary register, they will give their data to the arithmetic logic unit. Arithmetic logic unit. All of you know what is arithmetic logic unit? It performs all the arithmetic and logic operations. You might have also seen this in your course on computer design. All of you are aware of this, or should I need to elaborate this? All of you know this, right? What is arithmetic logic unit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the data from accumulator and temporary register, it will be brought to this arithmetic logic unit, and then it will be added, or whatever operation is to be performed will be performed, and the data will be given to data bus, not to the accumulator, right? Data bus, to the data bus, the data will be given, and the accumulator will take it back again. The accumulator will take it back again. So is the operation clear how it happens inside the microprocessor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and now an important thing is how would this microprocessor know when to do what? I mean, first of all, you have just specified a command addb, right? And the sequence of operations is like this: the data is in accumulator and the B register. Then the data has to be copied from B register through this multiplexer to the data bus. From data bus, it will be taken by the temporary register. Then the data of accumulator and temporary register will be given to the arithmetic logic unit. It will be added. It will be supplied to the data bus, and then accumulator will take all the data and store in itself. This is the sequence of operations. So what will ensure that this operation should happen in this sequence, and the sequence of elements should be the sequence that I have just displayed? So there should be some mechanism in this microprocessor that should be able to do that. So we will come to it in a moment, right? What mechanism is actually responsible for making this microprocessor disciplined, right? Because as you know that computers are very disciplined devices. If you give them one task at a time, they will perform that task and they will sit idly. If you give them the same task again, they will perform the same task in exact same manner without getting bored, right? So what makes this microprocessor disciplined? So you can see that there is this some unit which is called as timing and control circuit. So we will see in a while how it operates, how this timing and control unit operates. But you can see that there are a lot of inputs and a lot of outputs. And one of the important inputs that you see here is system clock, which is connected between X1 and X2. These two pins are there, between which the crystal oscillator is attached, and your clock signals for the entire circuit are generated. So we will get to know the meaning of all of these in a while. But this is the region which is responsible for generating the timing and control signals, right? Okay, timing and control signals could be generated by this. But who decides that timing and control signals should be generated in this manner? For example, to discipline the society, to take care of the discipline in the society, we have our police structure, right? So police is usually responsible for making people disciplined. You have traffic police. Traffic police will be responsible for making the traffic disciplined. But on what logic that traffic police works? There must be some ideology that traffic police is following. So where does that ideology and the instructions they come from? Anybody who wants to make a guess? No one? Okay, so let us understand this procedure in this manner. For example, you have a program. Where is the program stored? Is it stored within the microprocessor or in the external interfaced memory of the microprocessor? Anyone who wants to answer?
Instruction register.
No, not in the instruction register. We haven't even used this word till now. From the previous experience, when we read the programming model, what did we say? Where is the program stored? Inside the microprocessor or outside the microprocessor?
External interface memory.
In the externally interfaced memory, the program is stored. So do you see externally interfaced memory in this particular diagram?
No, sir.
No, there is no externally interfaced memory in this particular diagram. This is the internal architecture of 8085 microprocessor. So there is no externally interfaced memory. And how is the program stored? Probably I have shown this to you on the previous lecture, right? We have seen the location 4200 from where the program was stored as a set of bytes, and every byte has its decimal and hexadecimal equivalent, which was displayed there. All of you remember that or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So see, there is an externally interfaced memory which is kept side by side with this processor, and that contains the hexadecimal equivalent of the instructions that we want to execute. And what are those instructions? These are those instructions. We make a clever combination of these instructions, 74 instructions that you have got of 246 patterns. So we make a clever combination of those 246 patterns, and that is what we mean by a program. So let us have a look at this again, and let us discuss what makes this microprocessor intelligent. So you might have seen that there is this arithmetic logic unit. The primary purpose of arithmetic logic unit is just like a calculator. You have a calculator, and in your conventional calculator, you specify one addition by giving some data that I want to add these two numbers. So there is a plus sign for addition. You press this plus sign and addition will happen. So similarly, the calculator portion of this microprocessor is this arithmetic logic unit. Whatever inputs will be given to it, there are two inputs which can be given to it, and it will perform that calculation and give you the result. This is the primary unit, right? Arithmetic logic unit. Now, so this is performing the operation of calculations. Now, what is a program? A program is essentially a permutation or combination of the instructions that we have seen here, or the patterns that we have seen here. So there are 246 patterns that can be made out of 74 instructions. So a clever permutation and combination of these 246 patterns that you see here is called as a program, right? And do you all agree that by executing the same set of instruction in a different order, data will be manipulated in a different way? Is it or is it not?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So, in what sequence it has to be executed, it is decided by the programmer. The programmer will say that out of this 246 patterns, pattern number 50 will be my first line, pattern number second will be my second line, and so on and so forth. So in that way, a program is being made, right? So that combination of instructions in a particular order is called as a program, and that program has the capability of achieving something. So how many permutations can you make out of this 246 patterns? How many permutations or combinations can you make out of this 246 patterns? A simple question of math. Would somebody like to try?
Sir, factorial 246 into 246.
How did you arrive at that conclusion? Any logic behind this answer? Nothing? Okay, the answer is infinite. Can somebody guess now why infinite? Infinite because I have not specified that you want to make a program of 10 lines or a program of 20 lines or a program of 100 lines, right? So these 246 patterns of instructions could be used repeatedly inside your program, and depending upon whatever is the number of lines in your program, you can calculate alternatively how many programs you could have made in the same number of lines. So ideally, there is no restriction on the number of lines that you will be using in your program. But if you see theoretically, the externally interfaced memory has got only 2 raised to the power of 16 memory locations, right? So that is 64 kilobyte memory locations. So theoretically, your program could be as long as that. So imagine you have got 2 raised to the power of 16 places. and every place could be filled by one of the 246 patterns. So now you can imagine what is the amount of programs that are available to you if you use all memory at once. However, if you use one less memory element, that is, you use 2 raised to the power of 16 minus 1 memory locations, there will be another set of programs that you can make. 2 raised to the power of 16 minus 2, so there will be another set of programs you can make. So there is a huge possibility of making these programs. So virtually it's infinite, right? Because that number is so huge that you can consider it as infinite virtually. And if the external memory is not limited by 2 raised to the power of 16 elements, then of course you can make infinite number of programs there. So the idea here is that whatever intelligent combination of these 246 patterns you make, it is capable of instructing this computer system. This computer system that you see here, it is capable of instructing this computer system to perform those operations in an order through arithmetic logic unit. So apart from arithmetic logic unit and the basic registers that you have seen, whatever else you see here is required for making this microprocessor disciplined and perform operations in the order in which user has specified it, right? So let me begin by just giving you a simple example. So in the externally interfaced memory, starting from location 4200, let us say we have kept our program, right? So what will happen here is that program first byte, suppose MVI A01H is the first instruction. It is a 2-byte instruction, and we have discussed this. Why is it a 2-byte instruction? So first byte of that is MVI A, will be loaded onto this data bus. So the first byte at the beginning of the program will be floated onto the data bus, and through that data bus, this instruction register will take that particular data. Instruction register, you can see it is also of 8 bits. Okay, one more important point to note is that this arithmetic logic unit, it is written of 5 bits here. It's not of 5 bits, it is of 8 bits only. So this is a correction that you need to make here. And this instruction register, it will take the first byte from the externally interfaced memory through this data bus. So what this instruction register will do, it is of 1 byte, it will take the data and it will pass the data to instruction decoder and machine cycle encoding unit. So what is the purpose of this instruction decoder and machine cycle unit? Once the data MVI A has been received, not the other portion which is 01H, it is still in the externally interfaced memory. So once the data MVI A has been received, it will be passed to the instruction decoder circuit. And what does instruction decoder do? It will try to initiate a sequence of operations inside the entire system, which will make the system aware of what is to be done, right? So for example, MVI A is the instruction, so it will tell the system that this A register is now going to contain some data. This A register is now going to contain some data, and to be able to keep that data, you have to do certain operations. So some of you are opening your camera and closing it, so please don't do that. It creates disturbance here. Right. So here, this instruction register will make the entire system aware that this instruction decoder will make the entire system aware of the fact that inside the instruction register, I have got a command which is MVI A. So the next operation that we have to perform is movement of some data into the A register. And that is how, everything should be accordingly adjusted. I mean, the next byte of data that we are going to copy from the memory will have to be kept in the accumulator register. So accordingly, everyone should shut off their input connections and only accumulator should be activated. So the purpose of instruction decoder is this. And together with instruction decoder, we do have a machine cycle encoding. So what is this machine cycle encoding? As I told you that inside this microprocessor, everything happens with respect to a clock because it is a highly disciplined device and the instructions are to be executed in sequence. So that is why we have a machine cycle encoding. So forget about this word machine cycle as of now, but understand this as a timing sequence which is initiated by this complete unit. So this instruction decoder and machine cycle encoding, it will take the data from the instruction register and it will make the entire system aware which part of the circuit is to be activated and which part of the circuit is to be deactivated for the next operation, right? And it will also tell this timing and control circuit unit to initiate appropriate operations, because this timing and circuit unit has got these inputs as a crystal oscillator. A crystal oscillator will be connected here, and for microprocessor 8085, the frequencies might vary from 3 megahertz to some range, right? So this frequency of it is 3 megahertz, the crystal oscillator which is attached here, and I will give you the perfect range for that. There are various variants of 8085. So in which variant, which frequency is used, I will let you know. But 3 megahertz is the frequency which is available to all of the 8085 microprocessor at max. This is the maximum frequency which can be used, right? So this instruction decoder and machine cycle encoding unit will also tell this timing and control unit that MVI-A instruction has been received. So accordingly, you initiate the timing instructions. That is, to be able to execute an instruction, it is not that it will be executed at once. So that instruction MVI-A will be broken into several smaller parts, which will be done with the tick of a clock, or multiple ticks of the clock. So those multiple ticks of the clock are called as machine cycles, right? I mean, to be able to execute one instruction, that instruction is broken into smaller instructions, and one sensible task, it is completed in a set of those smaller instructions, which is called as machine cycle. So as soon as this MVI-A instruction is received, these machine cycles will be told to this timing and control unit, because in MVI-A, the first operation that is to be done is the A register has to be activated. The other operation is all of the registers which could take the data, like this temporary register, multiplexer, they have to be deactivated. They are all connected to the data bus, but they should not be able to take that data. So all of these have to be deactivated. So all of these are sequence of micro operations that are initiated within the microprocessor to be able to make the system aware. And how is that done? That is done through this timing and control circuit unit. So in the very first step, the accumulator has to be activated. It will be done with the first tick of clock, maybe. It is not an exact sequence of operations. I will let you know what is the exact sequence of operations when we will see the timing and circuit diagram. But for the time being, these micro operations are executed by using this timing and control circuit, right? So you can see that the next data that will come after MVI-A, it is 01H. So 01H will be loaded into this instruction register, and since it has come after a command, MVI-A, so this system already knows that it has to be a data. It could not be another command, because here you can see that in this table there are various things. There are these mnemonics, then there is this operand, and then you have got the hexadecimal code of these commands, right? So you can see that 8B stands for ADC command, but 8B could also be a data. So how will a microprocessor distinguish between data and a command? So if something is given after a command, it is expected to be a data, right? It depends upon the structure of the command that you are using. For example, there is a command like halt. So after halt, no data is expected. So the system will know that after halt there is nothing is expected, so it will simply halt the system, right? Similarly, you have used this increment command, which is INR A or INR B. So after INR B is a one single command. So after that, no data is required. So the system knows that if INR is the command, then this decoding unit that you have got there is already aware of what a command is intending to do. So that is how this makes the entire system aware. So after MVI-A, if 01H comes into the system instruction register or whatever data is there, it will be treated as data, and it is known that this data has to be copied to the accumulator register. So through the instruction register, the data is already available on the data bus. Instruction register has copied that, and that will be copied to the accumulator by the sequence of operations initialized by this timing and control circuit unit. So is this operation clear to everyone? This instruction register, instruction decoder and machine cycle encoding, and timing and control circuit. Are these things clear to everyone? What is the purpose of all of these? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the
Yes, sir.
important point to note here in the architecture of 8085 is that once a byte of instruction has been fetched means taken from the external memory. Once a byte has been fetched, it will be completely executed, and the system, after executing it, will fetch the next byte into the instruction register, right? So this is very important point, because some of the microprocessor, they will do the task of fetching the data from the external memory and executing the instruction in parallel. They will keep on fetching the instructions, and they will keep on executing whatever instructions they have got. But microprocessor 8085 is not of this nature. It is one of the fundamental microprocessors that we had. So it will just take 1 byte of that instruction from external memory, completely execute it, and when it is done with the complete execution, it will fetch the next byte of instructions. So this is a typical disadvantage of 8085 microprocessor, which we are going to rectify in 8086, but that we will see when the appropriate time comes. So the important point to note here is byte by byte, the instructions will be completely executed. So until 1 byte is completely executed, next instruction is not fetched in 8085 microprocessor. And since this is a complete digital circuit, what is it that is responsible for making this intelligent? So it becomes intelligent because of programming. And what is a program? Program is a clever sequence of the permutations and combination of the 74 instructions or 246 patterns that I have shown you. So those set of instructions, they are guiding the architecture of this microprocessor to function in a certain way. So this arithmetic logic unit has now got a purpose in life. It will do some calculations with according to the timing signals initiated by this timing and control unit, and the data will be moved into the appropriate registers. So that is how the programming is done internally inside a microprocessor system. So that's what makes this system intelligent. This instruction decoder and machine cycle encoding unit is responsible for making this entire system an intelligent system, right? Because whatever data the user has supplied through the program, user will supply a set of instructions as well as this data which is embedded in the program to this particular circuit. And depending upon this instruction decoder and machine cycle encoding circuit, the entire system performs the operation in the order in which the user has specified through program. So this component is very important, and it is responsible for making microprocessor being a differentiated member of digital circuits family. All the other digital circuits, they will simply take the data and they will process it and give it as an output. However, here this instruction decoder and machine cycle encoding circuit will decide how the data is to be processed in what sequence, and accordingly it will initiate these timing and control signals to the entire system. So the processing is not always in the same manner inside this digital circuit. For an example, in the beginning, in the first lecture, I had shown you this one circuit. Let me just bring that circuit on again. So in this first lecture, I have shown you this circuit, right? So here the input data could be taken at A0 and A1, and there is only one way that data can be processed through this particular system, right? Enable signal was there, but this enable signal was only responsible for either switching off or switching on this circuit. Apart from that, there is no important role with this enable circuit plays. However, the data, if this circuit is on, could be processed in only one way. There are AND gates and they behave in the exact same way, whatever is the data that you have supplied to them, right? However, if you see this particular digital circuit, the data which has been taken, it has been taken from the external program, which is stored in externally interfaced memory. The data is embedded together with the instructions, and that's what we call as program. And when the data comes, it comes byte by byte inside this system, and this instruction decoder and machine cycle units decides which part of the circuit has to be activated, which part of the circuit has to be deactivated, and at what time it should be activated or deactivated, right? So that is how the function of this particular circuit at a particular time is different as compared to another times. So is this point clearly understood, why this device becomes intelligent enough to be able to perform anything as compared to other digital circuits? Is this point understood completely? Why this digital circuit is intelligent? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, apart from this register stack, these temporary registers and accumulator, flag registers, arithmetic logic unit, instruction register, instruction decoder and machine cycle, timing and control, there are a few other elements. Let us discuss them one by one. So one of the unit that you see here is the interrupt control. What is the literal meaning of the word interrupt? How do you interrupt someone? What is the meaning of interrupting someone?
So to stop from executing the current operation and asking to do another operation.
Yeah, that is true. That is the technical definition for this microprocessor. But the literal meaning of this word interrupt is if somebody is doing their work, you just go and disturb them and tell them that, okay, now do this work for me, right? If you have a friend, he is doing something, you go to your friend and tell them, okay, now let's go out for a movie. So he will be interrupted from his study schedule and he will go with you to the movie and come back, right? So in the same way, a microprocessor, as I told you that this is only the brain portion of a complete circuit. It has to be interfaced with various peripherals to make it a microcomputer. I guess you already know what is the difference between a microprocessor and a microcomputer. Microprocessor is only the brain of a computer. It is incomplete in itself because it cannot do anything by itself. It has to be interfaced with the external peripherals. One of the peripherals is memory unit, which is externally interfaced to microprocessor. But apart from memory unit, it has to have other peripherals also, like the display unit, and then something like USB connector, and something like keyboard and mouse. So it needs to have all those peripherals to perform efficiently. So those peripherals, they do not know what is going inside the microprocessor. For example, your keyboard is internally connected to your microprocessor in your system, right? But when you want to type on your keyboard, you do not take care of the fact that, oh, inside the accumulator register, this calculation is going on, so I should wait for a few microseconds and then I will press the key on my keyboard. No, you do not do that. Whenever you want to write something, you just open the notepad program and start typing onto it. Sorry. Irrespective of whatever is going inside the microprocessor. So to handle those kind of devices, there is a interrupt control unit, right? And there are various inputs and outputs to it, which we will study when we will study the module on interrupt control and interrupt programming. So for example, a keyboard is attached and you are typing something. So whenever you press a key, the data will be available on the data bus, and the the data will be available on the data bus. But prior to that, an interrupt from the keyboard has to be made to this particular microprocessor that I have pressed the key, now you take the data. So microprocessor cannot discard this kind of request. Why? Because the user has given you some data, and whatever you are doing, you keep it aside. You keep that data of user first because that is important, because ultimately microprocessor is performing for the user. It is not a device which is performing for self-happiness, right? So it is performing for us. It is a slave device. So it should answer the interrupts that we have given to the microprocessor. So this unit is primarily responsible for handling the requests from the peripherals. And since peripherals, they may or may not have their clocks, right? Microprocessor has got an internal clock, but keyboard, it does not have any clock of itself. You press the data and it will be given to the microprocessor. Similarly, you have got mouse. If you click the mouse, then those mouse clicks should be accepted by the system. So an appropriate interrupt will be made through this interrupt control unit. There are various ways in which an interrupt can be made, and that we will study in the interrupt control logic. And after the interrupt is made, suppose the interrupt has been made by keyboard, and if it is accepted by the system, the data will be floated onto the data bus and it will be floated to the internal registers for the purposes of calculation, right? So this is the purpose of using this interrupt control unit. Now there is another unit which is called as serial input output. So although this microprocessor is a 8-bit microprocessor, so all the calculations will be done in the form of 8 bits. If you see the structure of data bus, it's an 8-bit data bus. This 8-bit data bus can also be externally connected to a 8-bit peripheral, right? A peripheral which takes or gives 8-bit data. So that way parallel communication can happen. But if you have got some devices which are not able to communicate in parallel fashion, they only have one bit. So they will be communicating through this serial input output interface, which has got two things: serial input data and serial output data, SID and SOD. So this module is responsible for serial operation instead of parallel operation, right? So we will see when the appropriate time comes how the programming for that is done. Now, the important section here is we have discussed this data bus. Now we need to discuss something about the address bus also. So you can see here that in microprocessor, how many external memory locations are there? 2 raised to the power of 16 or 64 kilobyte memory locations. And in the beginning only, I told you that 8085 is a 8-bit microprocessor, which means the data bus will be of 8 bits and the accumulator will be of 8 bits. But the size of the address bus is 16 bits, on the grounds that the externally interfaced memory at max can be of 2 raised to the power of 16 locations. So the thing that you see here is the address bus. So let me just zoom this diagram and make some points clear about this. This address bus, it starts from AD0 to AD7, and then from AD8 to A15, not AD, AD0 to A7 and A8 to A15. So you can count from 0 to 7, and then from 8 to 15, there will be a total of 16 set of wires. So they are divided into two parts. The lower part is abbreviated as AD0 to AD7, and the higher part is called as A8 to A15, right? So there is a combination of 16 wires, which is called as address bus. So when you have an externally interfaced memory, when you want to access one data from one location of externally interfaced memory, whether you want to read it or write it, you first need to provide the address of that. So the address of that is combinedly provided onto all 16 bits, onto all of these 16 bits, and it is given to the external memory. So that particular memory location will be activated there, and the data can be read from, or the data can be written onto it. So for that purpose, this address bus is used. So to be able to read data from the externally interfaced memory, both of the buses are required. Address bus, which is this 16 set of wires, and the data bus, which is this set of 8 wires. They both will be connected to the externally interfaced memory, and whatever address is being given to this address bus, it will be provided there. That corresponding cell will be activated, and the data from that cell can be copied to the data bus or vice versa, and then it can be read inside the system, right? So this is the purpose of using this address bus here. Now you can see that the structure of this address bus is a little unique. Half of the bus, that is higher order bus, is unidirectional, and the lower order bus is bidirectional. The nomenclature for the higher order bus is A8 to A15, which makes sense because these are address lines. So address bit 8 to address bit 15. But what does this AD0 and AD7 stands for? What does D stands for? So to be able to understand, okay, another important point is that it is bidirectional in nature. The lower part of address bus is bidirectional in nature. So when you want to read something or write something onto the externally interfaced memory, the first task is you have to provide the address to that. So that is a one-way operation. You will always be giving addresses to the externally interfaced memory. Is there any condition where you have to take the address back from the externally interfaced memory? Is there any condition where the external memory will give you addresses? Somebody would like to add to this? No one? How many of you are listening? Please raise your hands. Okay, 10 people only. 31, sorry, 35. Okay, so quite a good amount of people are listening. So see this, the thing here is that the address bus essentially has to be unidirectional, because when you have externally interfaced memory, you only give addresses to that. There is no purpose of taking back those addresses, right? So what is this bidirectional nature of the lower order address bus? So think about this. You have got, suppose, a resource. You have got a resource, and you have got a door in your house, right? And through that door, suppose you have got a tenant in your house, right? And that tenant lives inside your house in one particular room, right? So the tenant has a habit of leaving for office at 6 o'clock and coming back from the office in the evening at 6 o'clock. So these are the only two times that the door will be used by that tenant. Other times you will not be disturbed. For rest of the other times, you and your family lives inside that house and you are using that door frequently, any number of times, right? You're going back and coming, and your family members are also going back and coming. So that's what you are going to do. So is it a efficient use? Would it be efficient to build a separate door for your, tenant, to be able to enable him to go and come, knowing the fact that he will only use the gate two number of times? So would it make it sensible to make a separate room, a separate door in his room? Yes or no?